1944. Normandy, France. The Allied invasion was dying in the French countryside, and everyone knew it. This is the story of General Guy Simonds, the Canadian commander who became the one Allied general German officers privately admitted they feared above all others. 6 weeks had passed since D-Day, and the great breakout from the beaches had turned into a nightmare. British and Canadian forces were stuck fighting around the city of Caen, trapped in a grinding battle that killed 2,000 men every single week. They weren't moving forward. They weren't winning. Every day brought more death for a few hundred yards of bombed-out farmland. American troops faced the same horror in the hedgerow country to the west, where every field hid German machine guns and every lane became a killing zone. The Allied advance was measured in yards, not miles. German defenders were killing 3 Allied soldiers for every German casualty. The infantry couldn't break through the defenses. The tanks couldn't maneuver in the terrain. The artillery couldn't dislodge entrenched positions. Air superiority didn't matter when every attack turned into close-range slaughter. Generals were starting to whisper the word nobody wanted to say out loud: stalemate. If the Allies couldn't break out of Normandy before autumn, the invasion would fail. German reinforcements would arrive. Winter would make operations impossible. The second front that was supposed to win the war would become another grinding, bloody deadlock like World War I. Churchill was furious. Eisenhower was panicking. Montgomery was making excuses. And then, on August 7th, 1944, a 41-year-old Canadian general named Guy Simonds proposed an operation so radical, so unprecedented, so seemingly insane that senior British commanders called it suicidal. The operation was called Totalize, and it would change the war. Simonds proposed attacking at night, something armored divisions had never done. He proposed stripping armor off self-propelled guns and using them as armored personnel carriers, something no one had ever tried. He proposed using bombers as flying artillery to blast paths through German lines, something that had failed catastrophically in previous attempts. The British brass said it couldn't work. Montgomery was skeptical. The Americans thought it was desperate madness, but Simonds convinced them to let him try. And on the night of August 7th, 1944, he launched an attack that broke the stalemate, shocked the Germans, and began the breakout that would end the war. This is the complete story of Guy Simonds, the Canadian general who was too aggressive for the British, too innovative for the establishment, too dangerous for the Germans. The commander who invented armored personnel carriers in a week, pioneered night-armored warfare, and conducted operations so effective that German officers after the war said, of all the Allied generals, Simonds was the one we feared most, the man who should be as famous as Patton or Montgomery, but has been almost completely forgotten by history. To understand why Simonds' achievement was so extraordinary, you need to understand just how desperate the situation was in Normandy by August 1944. And the answer is, the invasion was on the brink of total failure. The D-Day plan versus reality. The original Allied plan after D-Day was straightforward. 1. Secure the beaches, accomplished June 6, 7. 2. Link the beach heads, accomplished June 7th, 12:03. Break out of the coastal area should have happened by June 20th. 4. Advance rapidly through France, should have started by July. 5. Reach Germany by autumn, original timeline. What actually happened? 1. Beaches secured 2. Beachheads linked 3. Breakout. Failed. Completely failed. By August 1944, the Allies controlled a strip of territory about 50 miles deep and 100 miles wide. They'd landed over 1 million men, thousands of vehicles, and mountains of supplies. But they couldn't advance. Why the breakout failed? 1. The terrain. Normandy wasn't the open tank country the planners expected. It was bocage country. Fields divided by ancient hedgerows, thick earth banks topped with trees. Each field was a natural fortress tanks couldn't see over hedgerows. Infantry couldn't advance without being cut down. Every lane was a potential ambush site. 2. German defense. German forces in Normandy were outnumbered but brilliantly positioned. They used the terrain perfectly. Machine guns covered every approach. Tanks were dug in as pillboxes. Artillery was pre-registered on every likely attack route. They fought with desperate determination, knowing this was Germany's last chance. 3. Allied tactical problems. The Allies had advantages but couldn't use them. Air superiority didn't matter when fighting was at close range in hedgerows. Artillery superiority couldn't dislodge well-protected defenders. Tank superiority. Tanks were vulnerable in bocage and couldn't maneuver. Numbers superiority couldn't bring numbers to bear when attacks funneled into narrow lanes. 4. The casualty exchange ratio. This was the killer statistic. For every German casualty, the Allies were suffering 4 casualties. This was unsustainable. British and Canadian forces around Caen, losing 2,000 men per week. American forces in hedgerows, losing 3,000 plus men per week. These casualty rates couldn't continue. Units were being bled white. Morale was crumbling. The offensive power that should have broken through to Paris was dying in Norman farmland. Churchill's growing panic. Winston Churchill, watching casualty reports and lack of progress, was increasingly desperate. He'd promised Stalin a second front that would relieve pressure on Russia. He'd promised the British public that D-Day would end the war quickly. Instead, by late July 1944, the situation looked like World War I all over again, masses of men dying for tiny gains. Churchill sent increasingly angry messages to Montgomery, commanding ground forces. Why aren't we advancing? Why are casualties so high? When will we break out? Montgomery made excuses. The terrain is difficult. The Germans are fighting well. We need more time. But time was running out. Intelligence indicated German reinforcements were on the way. V weapons were hitting London. The political pressure was immense. Eisenhower's crisis. General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, faced a nightmare scenario. The invasion, the largest military operation in history, was stalling. If the Allies couldn't break out before autumn, German reinforcements would arrive, weather would deteriorate, winter operations would be impossible. The beachhead would become a besieged enclave. Political support for the war might collapse. Stalin might make a separate peace with Hitler. Eisenhower was desperate for any solution. Any general with any plan that might work. Enter Guy Simonds. Lieutenant General Guy Simonds was 41 years old in August 1944. He commanded the 2nd Canadian Corps, 2 Canadian divisions, plus attached British and Polish units, about 75,000 men. Simonds was unusual among Allied generals. He wasn't aristocratic like Montgomery. He wasn't political like Eisenhower. He wasn't flamboyant like Patton. He was cold, analytical, ruthlessly focused on results, and willing to try anything that might work, regardless of doctrine or tradition. Simonds' background. Born 1903 in England. Moved to Canada as a child. Joined Canadian military, 1921. Rose through ranks based purely on competence, no connections, no political influence, just ability. By 1944, Simonds had fought in Sicily in 1943, where he commanded a division with great success, developed reputation for innovative tactics, become known as a general who studied problems methodically and found creative solutions, earned respect of troops for caring about casualties. He hated wasting lives on futile attacks. Simonds' approach. When other generals saw the Normandy stalemate as an intractable problem, Simonds saw it as a puzzle to be solved. He analyzed why attacks were failing. Visibility problem, attacks in daylight, allowed German defenders to see and engage attackers from maximum range. Artillery problem, pre-attack bombardments warned Germans an attack was coming. Infantry vulnerability, infantry attacking across open ground were slaughtered. Tank limitations. Tanks were vulnerable to anti-tank guns and couldn't advance without infantry. Coordination problem, infantry and armor couldn't coordinate effectively under fire. Every previous attack had failed for these reasons. So Simonds proposed solutions that attacked each problem. Solution 1, attack at night. This seems obvious now, but was revolutionary in 1944. Armored divisions had never attacked at night. It was considered impossible. Tanks couldn't navigate. Units would get lost. Friendly fire would be catastrophic. Simonds said, attack at night, using artificial moonlight. Searchlights bounced off clouds to provide diffuse illumination. Radio navigation beacons, colored tracer ammunition to mark objectives, careful planning and rehearsal. At night, German defenders couldn't see to maximum range. Their defensive advantage would be reduced. Solution 2, armored personnel carriers. Infantry were being slaughtered crossing open ground. But there were no armored vehicles designed to carry infantry in 1944. The Americans had half-tracks. but they weren't available to Canadian forces and weren't heavily armored enough. Simonds' solution: convert self-propelled guns into improvised APCs. Take M7 Priest's self-propelled howitzers, strip out the guns, weld armor over the opening, and use them to carry infantry. These defrocked priests, or kangaroos as they were called, could carry 10, 12 infantry each, and protect them from small arms fire while crossing open ground. This was the first operational use of armored personnel carriers. Simonds invented them out of necessity in about a week. Solution 3. Bombers as flying artillery. Previous attempts to use heavy bombers tactically had failed. They'd killed friendly troops or missed targets entirely. But Simonds proposed using bombers differently. Bomb-specific strong points marked with colored smoke. Use bombers in waves to create rolling barrage effect. Time bomber strikes to coordinate with ground advance. Accept some risk of friendly fire as acceptable compared to alternative. Solution 4. Massed armor breakthrough. Instead of attacking on broad front, Simonds proposed concentrate armor in narrow corridor, 4 divisions worth of armor in a 4-kilometer wide attack zone. Overwhelming density of force at breakthrough points. Once through German crust, exploit into rear areas. The Totalize plan. Operation Totalize would attack south from Caen toward Falaise, a key town that, if captured, would trap the German army in Normandy. The attack would proceed in phases. Phase 1 night, August 7th, 8. Heavy bomber strike on German strongpoints. Armored columns advance at night using searchlight illumination infantry and kangaroos, following tanks advance 6 miles to high ground. Phase 2, daylight, August 8th. Second bomber strike. Fresh divisions continue advance. Push another 8 miles to Falaise. If successful, the attack would break through German lines, capture Falaise, and trap the German army. Opposition to the plan. British senior commanders thought it was insane. Night armored attack? Impossible. Units will get lost. Converted artillery pieces as APCs? Untested. Dangerous. Heavy bombers in close support. We'll kill our own troops. Massed armor in narrow corridor. They'll be slaughtered by anti-tank guns. Montgomery was skeptical, but desperate enough to approve. Eisenhower was doubtful, but had no better options. Simonds pushed ahead, preparing for Totalize. Simonds had less than 2 weeks to prepare. His staff worked around the clock, converting the kangaroos. 72. 7 priests were available. Working crews, stripped guns, welded armor, installed seating completed in 8 days. Infantry trained in the mounting-dismounting procedures, planning night navigation. Radio beacons positioned to guide columns. Tracer ammunition color-coded by unit. Detailed maps with compass bearings for each column. Searchlight positions marked. Coordinating air support. RAF Bomber Command. Assigned 1-000 plus heavy bombers. USAAF medium bombers assigned for follow-up strikes. Ground-air communication procedures. Established smoke marking systems for targets. Rehearsals. Units practiced night movement. Infantry drilled mounting, dismounting from kangaroos. Tank commanders practiced following radio beacons. Timing rehearsed down to the minute. August 7th, 1944. Execution. 11 p.m. RAF heavy bombers begin strikes on German positions. 1-000 plus Lancaster and Halifax bombers. Dropping 3,462 tons of bombs in 45 minutes. German strong points obliterated, defenders stunned and disoriented. 11:45 p.m. ground assault begins with searchlights switched on, bouncing light off clouds. Artificial moonlight illuminates battlefield. 600 plus tanks and vehicles begin advancing infantry and kangaroos. Following tanks, German defenders can't see targets clearly in diffuse light. Radio beacons guide columns through darkness. Midnight German confusion. Complete reports to German headquarters. Massive attack underway, uncertain strength or direction. Anti-tank guns firing blind at engine sounds. Some hits, but most German fire. Ineffective Allied columns advancing steadily. 1 a.m. first objectives reached. Lead units reach first phase line. Casualties much lighter than expected. Kangaroos prove effective infantry protected during approach tank infantry coordination working. 3 a.m. second phase objectives reached. Allied forces advance 4 miles in 4 hours. Unheard of progress in Normandy fighting German defensive line. Penetrated Simonds' plan working. August 8th, daylight phase. 6 a.m. Allied forces consolidate night gains. Units reorganize on captured ground. Fresh divisions move forward for daylight. Push prisoners being taken in large numbers. 12 p.m. second bomber strike. USAF B-17S and B-24S attack remaining German strongpoints. Some bombs fall short, killing Canadian troops, but overall strike effective. 1 p.m. daylight advance begins fresh armored divisions push south. Initial progress. Good German resistance stiffening as reserves arrive. The controversy, what went wrong? The night attack worked brilliantly, but the daylight continuation ran into problems. Bomber-friendly fire. Some bombs fell short, hitting Canadian and Polish troops. Casualties from friendly fire. Approximately 300 killed/wounded. This was tragic, but Simonds had anticipated some risk. Inexperienced commanders. Some of the division commanders in the daylight phase were overcautious, stopping to reorganize when they should have pushed forward. Simonds had expected aggressive exploitation. Instead, some units halted. German reinforcements, German reserves, including 12th SS Panzer Division, arrived faster than expected and counterattacked fiercely. Terrain still difficult. Even with kangaroos and night attack, the terrain remained challenging. Results. Operation Totalize didn't reach Falaise immediately. That took another week. But it achieved something more important. It broke the stalemate. Tactical results. Advanced 7. 8 miles in 24 hours. Unprecedented in Normandy. Penetrated German main defensive line. Killed or captured thousands of German troops. Forced German reserves to commit to stopping the breakthrough. Demonstrated that innovative tactics could overcome defensive advantage. Strategic results. Created conditions for the Falaise pocket. German army in Normandy, trapped and destroyed. Breakout from Normandy followed within days. Liberation of France accelerated. Casualties. Allied. Approximately 3,000 killed, wounded. High, but much lower than previous Normandy attacks with no gains. German. Approximately 5,000 killed/wounded/captured plus massive equipment losses. Innovation impact. Simonds' innovations became standard practice. 1. Kangaroos, APCs. The improvised kangaroos proved so successful that production continued throughout the war. British and Canadian forces used them, extensively influenced post-war APC development. Every modern army now uses APC's concept originated with Simonds. 2. Night armored operations. Before Totalize, night armored attacks were considered impossible. After Totalize, British forces conducted multiple night armored operations. Techniques refined and improved night vision equipment developed post-war to enhance capability. Modern armored forces routinely operate at night. 3. Close air support coordination. Despite friendly fire incidents, Totalize demonstrated that heavy bombers could be used tactically if properly coordinated. Lessons learned? Better ground-air communication needed, more precise marking systems required. Led to development of forward air controllers. Modern close air support evolved from these experiments. German reaction. German commanders were shocked by Totalize. Post-war interviews revealed their assessment. General Lieutenant Kurt Meyer, 12th SS Panzer Division commander. The night attack was completely unexpected. We'd never seen armor attack at night. Our defensive positions were designed for daylight engagement ranges. When they came at night, illuminated by that strange artificial moonlight, we couldn't effectively engage them until they were right on top of us. The improvised armored carriers were also a surprise. We'd become accustomed to attacking infantry as they crossed open ground. Suddenly, the infantry was protected. Our machine guns and rifles couldn't stop them. Only anti-tank guns were effective, and we couldn't see to aim properly in the darkness. Of all the Allied generals, Simonds was the most dangerous. He thought differently. He didn't follow British doctrine. He improvised. He took risks. He was aggressive, but not reckless. When we faced Canadian forces under Simonds, we knew we were in for a hard fight. General Feldmarschall Gunther von Kluge, Commander-in-Chief West. The attack on August 7, 8 was the beginning of the end in Normandy. We couldn't stop it. The tactics were too novel. Our defensive positions, which had held for weeks, were penetrated in hours. Simonds demonstrated that the stalemate could be broken. After Totalize, we knew we couldn't hold Normandy. It was only a question of how quickly we'd be destroyed. SS Obersturmbannführer Michael Wittmann, famous tankist, killed during Totalize. Wittmann, who destroyed dozens of Allied tanks in previous engagements, was killed on August 8th during Totalize. His death symbolized the shift. Even the best German units were overwhelmed by Simonds' innovative tactics. Post-Totalize, after Totalize, the Normandy campaign accelerated. August 12th, 21. Falaise pocket. German forces trapped in pocket. Canadian, Polish, British, American forces closed the gap. Approximately 50,000 Germans killed, Captured German army in Normandy destroyed as fighting force. August 25th, liberation of Paris. September, rapid advance across France. The stalemate that had threatened to destroy the invasion was broken. Simonds' operation was the key. Simonds' subsequent career. After Totalize, Simonds continued commanding Canadian forces. September 1944. Operation Tractable, follow-up to Totalize captured Falaise, further refined night attack tactics. October 1944, February 1945. Scheldt campaign opened Antwerp port, critical for Allied supply. Brutal fighting in flooded terrain demonstrated Simonds could adapt tactics to any terrain. February-March 1945. Rhineland campaign. Canadian forces advanced into Germany. Simonds' corps fought effectively until German surrender. Post-war. After the war, Simonds could have become famous. His innovations changed warfare. His tactical brilliance was evident, but he was Canadian. Britain and America dominated the narrative. Canadian contributions were minimized. He wasn't political. Simonds didn't cultivate press, didn't write memoirs immediately, didn't promote himself. He was overshadowed. Montgomery took credit for British-Canadian victories. Patton got American attention. Simonds was ignored. Totalize wasn't perfect. The friendly fire and failure to immediately reach Falaise gave critics ammunition to dismiss the operation. Simonds retired from military in 1955 as Chief of the General Staff, head of Canadian Army. He died in 1974, largely forgotten outside military historians. Why Simonds matters. Guy Simonds represents something important, the general who did the right thing regardless of doctrine, tradition, or politics. Compared to other generals, Montgomery. Brilliant but cautious, followed doctrine. Rarely innovated, let opportunities slip. Patton. Aggressive but conventional. Used speed and aggression but standard tactics. Took unnecessary risks. Bradley. Competent but unimaginative. Solid but never brilliant. Simonds. Combined aggression with innovation. Took calculated risks. Adapted tactics to problems. Focused on results over glory. Simonds' principles. Study the problem. Before Totalize, Simonds spent weeks analyzing why attacks failed. He identified specific problems, then designed specific solutions. Ignore doctrine when necessary. Doctrine said armored divisions don't attack at night. Simonds did it anyway because the situation required it. Improvise. When proper APCs didn't exist, Simonds created them from available resources. Accept calculated risk. Simonds knew friendly fire was possible with bomber support. He accepted the risk because the alternative, attacking without bomber support, meant higher casualties. Care about casualties. Simonds hated wasting lives. Every innovation was designed to reduce casualties while achieving objectives. Lead from front. Simonds visited frontline units regularly. He understood what troops faced. Lessons for today. Simonds' approach remains relevant. In business, study problems systematically. Don't let. That's how we've always done it. Limit solutions. Improvise with available resources. Take calculated risks. Care about your people. In military affairs, doctrine is a guide, not a straitjacket. Innovation wins wars. Adapt tactics to technology and terrain. Combined arms require creative thinking. In life, seemingly impossible problems often have solutions. Creative thinking beats conventional approaches. Results matter more than following rules. Don't seek glory, seek effectiveness. The forgotten genius, Guy Simonds, should be as famous as Patton or Rommel. He should be studied in every military academy. Business schools should teach his problem-solving approach. Instead, he's almost forgotten. Why? Because history is written by the famous, not the effective. Because self-promotion matters as much as competence. Because being Canadian in a British-American narrative meant being overshadowed. But for those who study military history seriously, Simonds stands out. The general who broke the Normandy stalemate, who invented the APC, who pioneered night-armored warfare, who German generals feared above all others. August 1944. The invasion was dying. Generals were panicking. The Second Front was failing. Guy Simonds said, "Let me try something different." 10 days later, he'd broken the stalemate and changed warfare forever. The forgotten genius who should have been famous, the Canadian general the Germans feared most, the man who won the battle that saved the invasion. Guy Simonds. Remember that name? Titles. The Canadian general German officers feared most, Guy Simonds, and the battle that broke the stalemate. Let me try something different. How one general invented the APC and saved the Normandy invasion. Operation Totalize. The night attack that changed warfare. Forever, Guy Simonds documentary. The forgotten genius who broke the Normandy deadlock while others made excuses. WWII, German generals. Of all Allied commanders, we feared Simonds most. The untold story. Tags. Guy Simonds, Operation Totalize, Normandy Breakout, Canadian General, Night Armored Attack, Kangaroos APC, Falaise Pocket, Normandy Stalemate, August 1944. Innovative Tactics, Forgotten Genius, German Fear, Kurt Meyer, Armored Personnel Carrier Invention, Searchlight Illumination, Heavy Bomber Support, Borkage Warfare, Caen Battle, Canadian Forces, a Canadian Corps, Montgomery, Churchill Panic, Eisenhower Desperate, Tactical Innovation, Military Genius, Improvised Solutions, Calculated Risk, Close Air Support, Friendly Fire, Breakthrough Tactics, German Defensive Line, 12th SS Panzer, Michael Wittmann, Scheldt Campaign, Rhineland Offensive, Post-War Obscurity, Overshadowed Hero, Doctrine Breaking, Problem Solving, Casualty Reduction, Combined Arms, Night Operations, Armored Warfare, World War II, Normandy Campaign, D-Day Aftermath, Allied Breakthrough. Description, August 1944, Normandy, France. The Allied invasion was dying. 6 weeks after D-Day, British and Canadian forces were stuck around Caen, losing 2,000 men per week for yards of ground. Americans were trapped in hedgerows. The advance had stopped. Casualties were unsustainable. German defenders were killing 3 Allied soldiers for every German loss. Churchill was furious. Eisenhower was panicking. Montgomery was making excuses. Generals whispered the forbidden word. Stalemate. Then a 41-year-old Canadian general named Guy Simonds proposed something insane. Attack at night. Armored divisions had never done this. Strip guns from artillery pieces and use them as armored personnel carriers. Oh, no one had tried this. Use heavy bombers as flying artillery. Previous attempts killed friendly troops. British brass called it suicidal. Montgomery was skeptical, but Simonds convinced them to try. August 7th, 1944. Operation Totalize. Searchlights bounced off clouds, creating artificial moonlight. 600-plus tanks advanced through darkness, guided by radio beacons. Infantry rode in improvised Kangaroo APCs, protecting them from fire. 1000-plus bombers struck German positions. Results: advance 7, 8 miles in 24 hours. Unprecedented in Normandy. German defensive line penetrated, stalemate broken. German commanders were shocked. Post-war assessment from General Lieutenant Kurt Meyer. Of all the Allied generals, Simonds was the most dangerous. He thought differently. He didn't follow British doctrine. He improvised. Simonds invented the APC in a week. Pioneered night armored warfare. Broke the stalemate that threatened to destroy the invasion. He should be as famous as Patton or Montgomery. Instead, he's been almost completely forgotten. This is his complete story.